The pharmacy receives a prescription for 100 grams of 5% hydrocortisone ointment. You have 10% hydrocortisone ointment and a 2.5% hydrocortisone ointment available. Using only these products, how many grams of the 2.5% ointment should be used to compound this prescription? Right, so let's see what we have here. We have a prescription for this, the 5% only. However, since we don't have the 5%, we have to compound it using a 10% ointment and a 2.5% ointment. Make sure to realize the question is only asking how many grams of the 2.5% ointment to use. Right, so that's how you understand the question first. So this is an alligation question because you're combining some bigger product with a smaller percentage product and trying to get something in the middle, which is 5%. So alligation, you always write down one of the numbers here. So I'm going to write 10% for the 10% ointment, which is what we have in stock. And also we have in stock a 2.5% ointment. And we want to make a 5% ointment. And then now you just go run through the numbers and subtract them from each other. So 10 minus 5 is 5. 2.5 minus 5 is 2.5. Make sure you realize that, so the top half is going to be how much of the 10% ointment we're going to calculate, and then the bottom half is how much of the 2.5% ointment we're going to calculate. So now the next step is to get the total amount of each of these parts, because these represent parts, 2.5 parts, 5 parts, but it's out of how many you have to calculate the total. So just add these two up. 2.5 and 5 is equal to 7.5. These two together is 7.5. So in the denominator, I just like to put like 7.5 here, parts. This just helps me understand what this is. Right? So this fraction, 2.5 out of 7.5 parts, that's a fraction amount of that 10% amount that you need, 10% ointment. So I'm going to multiply this fraction by the total amount in the mixture. So in this case, it's 100 grams. Right? Same thing with the bottom, 100 grams. Right? So the top half will tell us the answer to how much of the 10% ointment that we're going to use. And the bottom half is going to show us how much of the 2.5% ointment that we're going to have. So I'm going to multiply these out. So 2.5 divided by 7.5 times 100, that equals 33.333333 grams. Always keep as many significant figures as possible. And then the bottom half, so 5 parts over 7.5, and then multiply it by 100, that equals 66.66666667 grams. Right? So remember the question is asking how much of the 2.5% ointment. So remember I said this bottom half here represents how much of the 2.5% ointment. So that's why the answer is this, 66.66666667 grams. That's how much of the 2.5% ointment that should be used to compound this prescription. But remember, the final answer has to be rounded to the nearest tenth, so follow the instructions. So that's why our answer is 66.7 grams. And the answer is no units of commas. So that's why in the computer, you're just going to put 66.7. And that's the answer you enter in the computer, and that's your answer. Right? And if you want to verify your answer, if you can do this quickly on the Naplex, I would definitely do it if you have a lot of time. So to verify the answer, so the total amount I need in the prescription is 100 grams of the 5% hydrocortisone. So I'm just going to calculate the amount of drug in this. So 100 grams times it by 5% hydrocortisone. So that's 5 grams of drug divided by 100 grams of mix. And grams of mix cancel out. So 5 grams of drug. This is the total in the amount of drug in the final ointment. So now I'm going to calculate how much drug is in this amount that I'm adding, because remember I'm adding 66.7 grams of the 2.5% ointment plus 33.333 grams of the 10% ointment, and together they're going to give me a 5% hydrocortisone ointment, right? So these two, this here by itself is 5 grams. So I want these two to be equal to 5 grams of drug, because this is just to make both the mixture total of the 10% and the 2.5%, right? So I'm going to confirm that this here, this number, so this is the 10% ointment, times it by the 10% ointment, which is 10 grams of drug, divided by 100 grams of mix. These cancel out, right? So this is written for the 10% ointment. So now I'm going to find the amount of drug in this, in 66.6667 grams of the 2.5% ointment. Times it by 2.5 grams of drug divided by 100 grams of mix, because that's what 2.5% is. So these, if I add these two together, that should equal 5. And if I get 5, that's how I know this answer is correct. And that's how you verify it. So if you're like crushed on time, or if you're not really good at math, I would totally just skip this step right here, because you don't have time to calculate it. But if you're really good at math, I would definitely do this, because then you know you did the answer correctly, and you can just move on right away knowing that you got the answer correct. And that's it. Goodbye.